Dealing with code signing for iOS development can be daunting, but doing it with Telerik Platform's help makes it a lot easier. Since this process obliges you to switch back and forth between the iOS Developer Member Center and Platform, it's helpful to have those two tabs open. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to set up developer provisioning for your iOS app as a developer. This will allow you to distribute your app for testing on various devices prior to sending it to the App Store for review. In Platform, select an app that you need to provision and navigate to the code screen. Click the cogwheel icon on the far right and select Options. Select iOS, Cryptographic Identities, and click Create. Enter the name, email address, and country that you want to use for your certificate signing request. Click OK and save the newly generated CSR file to your local computer. Make note where that CSR is stored, as you'll need it in a minute. Your newly created request is listed as a pending cryptographic identity. Now we need to import that certificate into the iOS Member Center. In the Member Center, click Certificates, Identifiers and Profiles, Certificates, and click Plus. When prompted, what type of certificate do you need, click Production, App Store, and Ad Hoc, and then click Continue twice. Upload the CSR file you just generated from the platform into your Apple account by clicking Choose File. A CER file will be generated. Returning to Telerik Platform, you now need to import the new CER file. Click Import in the Cryptographic Identities panel to do this. Your pending certificate signing request is removed and a new cryptographic identity is added to the list. You can now use it to code sign your iOS apps during the build process. One thing to note here is that you can't use your CER file again to recreate a certificate. This operation creates a P12 certificate, which you may want to back up locally, because if you lose it, you won't be able to recreate it. But before we are ready to complete the code signing process, we have one more thing to do. We have to create a provisioning profile for your app. Let's return to the iOS Member Center. Since we are creating a provisioning profile that will only be able to run on specific devices, you may need to add devices identified by their device identifier to the devices list in the Member Center. You can discover a device's identifier by connecting a device to your computer via USB and opening iTunes. Find the device listed in iTunes and click the Summary pane. If you click on the device's serial number, the device ID is shown. You can copy that ID and add it to your list of devices to associate to your provisioning profile. To create a new provisioning profile so your app can be tested on these devices, navigate in the iOS Member Center to Provisioning Profiles. Create a new provisioning profile by clicking Plus, and then Ad Hoc. If you plan to use services such as Game Center, in-app purchase, and push notifications, or want a bundle ID unique to a single app, use an explicit app ID. If you want to create one provisioning profile for multiple apps or don't need a specific bundle ID, select a wildcard app ID. Select the certificate to include in this provisioning profile, then select the devices you need to associate to this profile and give it a name. When you're done, download it to your local computer. Returning to the platform, select Provisioning Profiles and click Import. Browse to the location where the mobile provision file for your provisioning profile is stored, select it, and confirm the import. Now you can build and run your app on a device as long as that device is associated to the profile. One thing to note is that if you want to add a new device to the provisioning profile, you need to add it into the Dev Center, regenerate the provisioning profile with a new device, and re-upload it to the Telerik platform. When you're ready to build your app for deployment onto your test devices, click Build, iOS App Package, and confirm that your app will use the wildcard profile and certificate that you just created. You'll see the list of devices associated to the provisioning profile. After building, the IPA file that is generated will be available to download. If you are building an app for production or need to test push notifications, you have a slightly different workflow. Let's take a look how to handle this use case. The first thing you need to do is ensure you've set up your app with an app ID. In the Project Navigator, click on Properties, and in the General tab, edit your application identifier to reflect your app's ID. In the Apple Member Center, create an explicit app bundle ID that matches the app ID you entered in the platform. Note, you just need the bundle ID, which is the app ID without the seed prefix. It will look something like com.mycompany.myapp. After this is done, you can create a production provisioning profile that will use this app ID. I'm going to reuse the distribution certificate that I created earlier, as it works for both ad hoc device deployment and for sending apps to the App Store. This time, however, we'll create a new provisioning profile in the Apple Member Center by clicking Provisioning Profiles, Distribution, App Store. Choose the app ID that you just created in the drop-down. You'll be prompted to select the appropriate distribution certificate. Download this provisioning profile to your desktop. In Platform, navigate to the Provisioning Profiles area of the Options screen and import this new provisioning profile. Now, when you're ready to send your app to the App Store, your certificates and provisioning profiles are set up. Since you're ready to send your app to the App Stores, you can click Publish App Stores App Store. Click Next, and you'll see your certificate and provisioning profile in place for your app ID. Build your app for the App Store, and when the build is complete, you'll be able to finish sending your app to the App Store. The iOS App Store requires a series of steps within the store which are outside the scope of this video. In addition, to upload your final application package to iTunes Connect, you may need Application Loader, a separate software package, depending on your platform subscription level. You must have a matching app record in the Waiting for Upload state in iTunes Connect. These steps are outside the scope of this tutorial, but you can get information in Apple's Member Center on the details.